everyone, Mrs. Allen back with some more writing challenges. Over the next 2 weeks we're going to be thinking about the story of Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel is another traditional tale, and so, like with the Three Little Pigs, traditional tales sometimes are slightly different. So that we're all thinking about the same version of Hansel and Gretel, have a listen and a look at the audiobook on the school website. If you haven't already done that, pause the video now and have a look. Okay, now we all know the story that we're thinking about. The story that has a woodcutter and his wife, who is the stepmother to Hansel and Gretel. Well, as you probably know, in this story, the woodcutter and his wife are very, very poor. So one day, the stepmother says to the woodcutter that he must take the children into the forest and leave them there. So Hansel and Gretel go into the forest. The woodcutter makes a fire for them and they fall asleep. And when they wake up, they're all alone. And Gretel is very sad. She wonders what's going to happen. But Hansel says, don't worry, because I collected some little stones and I've left a trail all the way back home. So Hansel and Gretel go all the way back home. And the stepmother is very cross. She didn't want to see the children back. So she said to her husband, you must take them into the forest again and leave them there. So the next day Hansel and Gretel were taken into the forest again by their father. He made them a fire and left them there for a rest. They fell asleep, and when they woke up they were all alone. Gretel was very sad again. We are lost, she thought. But Hansel said, don't worry, this time I dropped some breadcrumbs so we'll be able to find our way home. But no, they couldn't, because the birds had all come and eaten the breadcrumbs. So Hansel and Gretel had to have a new plan. So they went off into the forest searching, and they found a house made of sweeties. They were very excited. They started to eat the sweeties from the house, and out came an old woman who was really a witch. She said, come into my house. So Hansel and Gretel went into the house with the little old lady. Once they got inside the house, they realised what the little old lady was like, because she put Hansel in a cage and she made Gretel do all the hard work. She said to Gretel, I want you to see whether the oven is big enough for Hansel to fit in. Gretel went and looked in the oven. Oh, she had a plan. She said to the witch, no, it's not big enough for Hansel. So the witch went to have a look. Gretel pushed her into the oven, and then Hansel and Gretel searched the house and they found a big chest full of riches, coins and jewellery. They carried it all the way home, and when they got back to their house, they found their father, and the stepmother was no longer there. So they lived happily ever after. I've just shown you how to retell that story using puppets. That's your first challenge today. You need to print the puppets off of the school website or create your own puppets and then retell the story. Hope you have fun. But that's not our only challenge today. Our second challenge today is to have a think about the whole story and have a little think about a story review. And you can find this frame on the school website too. And it's got 5 boxes for you to put your ideas about the story in. We've got this one here that says, what was the setting? Where did this story mostly take place? Have a think. Then we have, who is the main character or characters? I think I'd have to have Hansel and Gretel for that box. And then down here it says, what happens at the very beginning of the story? What happens in the middle of the story? and what happens at the end of the story. Now you'll see there's not very much space, so you can't write lots and lots, but you need to find the important key parts of the story. So, before you go and start, have a little think and have a little talk to your adult or your listening partner or your talk partner if you're in school, and see if you can tell them the answers to those questions. Off you go. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's have a think together then. I wonder if you thought most of this story happened in the woodland, because the little cottage was in the woodland and so were the children. As we already thought, the main characters are Hansel and Gretel. And then what happened at the very beginning of the story? Well, I think I would think about the bit where they were taken into the forest by their father and left there. And then in the middle of the story, what happened? Well, I think in the middle of the story, they found the sweetie house and they went to eat it. And then at the end of the story, we could think about the part where they put the witch in the oven and they found